You ever come home from a long day expecting the usual quiet chaos of the apartment and instead find your roommate tearing up what looks like your private mail? Yeah, that was me last Thursday. I step through the door, shoes half off, and there's Jake, my roommate, the guy who could probably moonlight as a private investigator with his nosy little habits, kneeling down by the trash bin, frantically shredding a handful of paper. I froze. Like, mid-shoe-off froze? What the hell are you doing? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, but inside it was like someone had slammed the brakes on a roller coaster. Jake glanced up with this sly smirk, like he'd just been caught stealing candy but honestly thought it was hilarious. Found some stuff, he said, river of cool confidence in every word. You really don't want me to show you what I found. Trust me. Now I'm standing there, caught somewhere between confused and on guard. I half thought this was some kind of prank. Jake does have a flair for the dramatic, but no, he was actually destroying my letters and not the ones you toss after a week. These looked like personal letters. Paper in my handwriting, spirit of my privacy obliterated right there in front of me. There was a pause, no clanging pots from the kitchen, no background noise, just me staring at him trying to process what the hell the guy was doing with my mail, and Jake sitting there like it was just another Thursday. I couldn't help but ask again, "Why are you destroying my stuff?" Jake shrugged as if he wasn't in the middle of violating every unspoken roommate rule ever. Seriously, you don't want to know, just let it go. For a moment, I thought maybe I should just shrug it off. Maybe he found some embarrassing love letter I wrote in high school or something, though honestly, why would he randomly start burning my mail instead of telling me? But then, something about the way his eyes darted away told me this was bigger than some harmless vandalism. I cleared my throat, feeling my heartbeat pick up. "Jake, what did you find?" He leaned back, snapping the shredded bits into the trash. "That's complicated. Let's just say, some things are better left unseen." And there it was. My roommate, the guy who somehow always knows a little too much, was guarding a secret that suddenly, for the first time, made me feel like I didn't really know him at all. Jake and I, well, we've never exactly been the poster boys for the perfect roommate relationship. Picture this, me, trying to guard my personal bubble like it's a fortress, and Jake, who has this borderline pathological need to know every little detail about what's going on, not just in the apartment, but in my life in general. It's not like I haven't told him the usual "I need my space" talk a dozen times, but you know how it goes with some people. They hear you, but their version of listening comes with a side of selective deafness. And yeah, lately Jake's been off. Not like the usual. He rearranged the kitchen shelves off, but something creepier. You know when someone gets that twitchy, overly serious vibe that's just not them? That. Ever since I started dating Sarah, the new girl I met at work, Jake seemed to be tiptoeing around the apartment like he was defusing a bomb, eyes flicking every which way, acting way too interested in my comings and goings. I mean, it would be one thing if he was just respectful or curious in that annoying but benign way, but this was something else. The thing is, Jake's always had a habit of creeping around the apartment when I'm not home. Like that soft-footed ninja move that's impressive if it wasn't so unnerving. He'd accidentally pick up my phone when I'd leave it lying around or borrow my laptop to check a quick email, which usually meant snooping way beyond any reasonable boundary. At first, I thought maybe it was just our dynamic. He's talkative, opinionated, believes he's the big brother of this apartment. But then again, shredding my letters? That wasn't just casual nosiness. That was invasion. So now, I'm sitting here, trying to piece together what Jake could have found in those letters that turned him into some kind of frenzied shredder. I've always kept my feelings and important stuff between the lines of those pages. Notes to myself, letters I never sent, even some scrambling thoughts about Sarah and me, things I sometimes wrote down just so my brain wouldn't explode. Could it be that Jake stumbled on something about Sarah? Maybe mixed feelings, doubts, something he found alarming, or was it something else altogether, something personal? And if it was serious enough for him to destroy those letters on the spot instead of telling me, then what on earth was he protecting me from? I tried to remember if I'd ever let him know anything remotely secretive. Hell, the guy's always had this bizarre habit of turning basic info into a full-blown crisis. Once, when I mentioned I wasn't feeling great, he somehow concluded I had a terminal illness and proceeded to Google early death symptoms at 2 a.m. That's Jake for you. And yet, despite all that, these letters were mine, me, raw and tangled up in ink and emotion. If Jake found something that worried him enough to shred them, then it had to be serious. Or maybe he was just the nosy type who freaked out when he came face to face with an actual mystery. I flicked through my mental Rolodex trying to figure out what could possibly be behind Jake's strange behavior these days. It wasn't just the letters. It was as though he had this gnawing anxiety about, well, me. Not in a bad roommate way, but in that weird, suffocatingly, I need to know everything's way that makes sharing a space feel like living under a microscope. Just yesterday, he'd randomly barged into my room without knocking, of course, to borrow a pair of socks. Except he came back with this knowing smirk and a cryptic comment about how some things don't add up. He never elaborated, and I thought about calling him out, but decided it was easier to play the calm roommate card and hope he chilled out. But now, with shredded letters in the trash and Jake so cagey it made my skin crawl, I was starting to suspect that Jake wasn't just meddlesome, he was hiding something. Or worse, he knew something about my life that I hadn't even considered sharing. And honestly, the wildest part was wondering if Jake was trying to protect me from myself, or if he had some other agenda tangled up in those torn papers. Maybe there was more to Jake's nosiness than anyone imagined. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for me to get to the bottom of it before the mystery tore this apartment apart. Still, there was one thing I knew for sure. Whatever Jake had found in those letters, it wasn't something he was ready to talk about. Not yet. And that silence, that hesitation, it was louder than anything he could say. Jake didn't exactly roll out the red carpet for honesty that evening. Instead, he dropped these little crumbs of information like a mysterious trail of breadcrumbs, but man, he sure loved making me work for it. So, I started, leaning against the kitchen counter. You've got some big reveal about my letters. What's the deal? Jake gave me this look, half smug, half exasperated, like I just asked him to solve world hunger. It's complicated. Not exactly bedtime story material. Try me, I said, folding my arms. Honestly, I was tired of this cloak and dagger act. Either you tell me, or I'm calling in reinforcements. He chuckled, but there was tension under it. All right, here's a teaser. There are things you wrote about, your plans, big stuff, not just diary ranting. My heart did a little flip. Plans? Like what? Was it about Sarah, moving out, or something I didn't even realize I was writing about? Before I could poke more, the apartment door flung open and in bounced Mia, our mutual friend, full of energy and completely oblivious to the tension thick enough to cut with a butter knife. Oh hey, what's with the serious faces? You guys plotting something, or is someone finally winning at Jenga? She grinned, dropping her bag by the couch. Jake's eyes darted to the scattered remnants of the shredded paper on the floor. Nothing, Mia, just hanging out. Uh-huh, she said, raising an eyebrow like she didn't buy it for a second. I shot Jake a glance. You could almost see the panic register on his face. He quickly swept up the paper bits with a theatrical flair, shoving them into the trash like they were the evidence of a crime scene. I tried to play it cool, but inwardly thought, this is perfect timing. Thanks, Mia. Mia plopped down, stretching out on the couch. So, what's really going on? Jake's been acting weirder than usual. Did you guys get into a fight or something? No fight, Jake said too fast. Just stuff. Stuff? I echoed, feeling the walls closing in a bit. Like what? Jake glanced at the door like he was weighing whether to bolt outside, then decided against it. Look, maybe later, he muttered. Before the interrogation could continue, there was an unexpected knock, 3 short raps, and the unmistakable creak of Mr. Harris, our landlord, stepping into the hallway. He had this way of showing up exactly when he wasn't invited, armed with peculiar timing and a smile that made you question if he was genuinely friendly or just a full-time meddler. Evening, kids, he said, stepping into the living room, hands tucked behind his back like he'd just solved a great mystery or was about to start one. Sounds like there's some heavy brain activity in here. Jake stuffed his hands into his pockets, avoiding eye contact. Leach is talking, Mr. Harris. I hope the talking doesn't involve any unwanted noise complaints from neighbors. You know how the building is. Mr. Harris winked, then quickly added, nothing private, I trust. I do run a tight ship around here. I blinked, not sure if he was joking or being serious. Mia gave me a look that said, well, that's definitely awkward. Mr. Harris lingered for a moment more. Then with an almost conspiratorial nod towards Jake, he said, if you need help settling any roommate disputes, just ring me. And then he was gone, pulling the door shut behind him with a careful click. Silence dominated the room, the kind where every breath feels loud. I turned to Jake and tried the direct approach again. What was all that about? Why are you so secretive? If it's about those letters, we need to talk. Jake shrugged, but this time, it wasn't the casual shrug. It felt heavy, weighted. Look, I'm trying to protect you. Some stuff isn't ready to be out in the open, and honestly, it's better if it stays that way. I frowned. Protect me? From what? Jake's eyes flicked away, and for a moment I thought he was going to say more, but then he just said, some things are messy, you don't want to get involved. Before I could push further, Mia piped up, you guys are acting like you're in some spy movie, just spill it already. Jake gave her a feeble grin but kept his lips tight. I sighed, frustration bubbling up. Jake, I don't get why you're dodging this. If you found something in my stuff, either you tell me or you owe me a real explanation. He stood up, pacing across the room like he was wrestling with himself. It's not that simple, man. And in that moment, with the half-shredded letters lying like casualties on the floor, I realized that whatever Jake's secret was, it wasn't just about privacy anymore. It was about trust, and maybe, just maybe, how far someone's willing to go when they care. A little too much. But I was stuck with a roommate who knew too much and was holding it all back like a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. So I waited, and hoped he would crack before this thing tore us apart. Finally, Jake dropped the act. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting around the room like he was weighing how much to reveal without completely unraveling his carefully constructed wall. "All right," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Here's the deal. Those letters. You weren't just scribbling some random thoughts or scribbled angst about Sarah. You were planning to move out. Like a real plan, dates, new places, budgets, the whole 9 yards?" I blinked, caught off guard. "Okay, so moving out isn't exactly a secret." Jake shook his head. "To me, it was. You never said a word. And suddenly, all these plans were just sitting there, hidden like a big secret you didn't trust me with." It hit me then. The shredded letters weren't about some drama or scandal. They were about me quietly plotting my exit from this apartment, from the awkward back and forth with Jake, from the tension hanging between us like thick fog. And honestly, I could see why it rattled him. He'd been my roommate for 2 years now? While we weren't exactly best friends, living here had become a strange kind of routine for both of us. "I thought if I told you," I said slowly, "you'd either freak out or try to convince me to stay. And honestly, I wasn't ready to deal with that." Jake huffed a laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, well, I freaked out anyway. But destroying your letters? That was pretty extreme." "Yeah, I get that," I admitted. "And I hate that you went through my stuff." "That's crossing a line, Jake." "But I wasn't exactly knocking on your door to talk about all this either." We sat down, the tension between us softening just a bit. There was an awkward pause, the kind loaded with unspoken truths and regrets. "Look," Jake said, "I'm sorry for invading your privacy. But I was scared. What if you left and I was stuck with the rent alone? What if you needed me and I wasn't around to help? I guess I just didn't know how to handle it." I nodded slowly, realizing his nosiness, annoying as it was, came from a place of misplaced worry, maybe even a little loneliness masked as control. "I get it, I really do," I replied. "But if we're going to live together, we need to set some ground rules, boundaries that both of us respect. You don't get to play detective in my life, and I can't just shut you out." Jake gave me a genuine, if slightly sheepish smile. "Deal. I'll try to dial down the NSA Act." We laughed, a little awkward but real. It wasn't a perfect fix, not by a long shot. I could still feel that flicker of uncertainty, wondering if Jake truly understood where to draw the line. Privacy isn't just about locked doors and closed notebooks. It's about feeling safe in a space that's shared but still ours individually. Later, when Mia stopped by again, she teased us mercilessly about our roommate reconciliation summit, but honestly, I was grateful for the normalcy she brought. And when Mr. stopped, Harris checked in one more time with his usual nosy grin. It was clear living here was messy, unpredictable, but maybe manageable if we kept the awkward honesty coming. So here we are, two guys sharing a place, navigating the strange territory between friendship, living together, and what counts as private. I'm not saying everything's fixed or that I'm waving a flag of peace and privacy for life. Jake might still surprise me, pop up in my room when I least expect, or develop new, bizarre theories about my life. But for now, there's a truce of sorts, and maybe that's enough. Would I forgive a roommate who went through my things? I guess it depends on the why, the apology, and what happens after, because some lines, though crossed, can be redrawn. Others might just become permanent markers in the map of shared living. Either way, this chapter with Jake definitely ended with more questions than answers. And in our chaotic little apartment, that felt pretty real.